Param Vijayate Shri Kṛṣṇa Sankirtanam. Total world victory of Hare Krishna. My name is Sitapati Das, and this is Bhagavad-gita 1:37-38. You got both of us today, Sitapati Das and Dana Devi.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Okay, Bhagavad-gita 1:37-38. The Song of God. Chapter 1, observing the armies on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Arjuna Vishad Yoga. Yadyapyetena paśyanti lobhopahata-cetasaḥ kula-kṣaya-kṛtaṁ doṣaṁ mitra-drohe pātakam katham na jñeyam asmābhiḥ pāpād asmān nivartitum kula-kṣaya-kṛtaṁ doṣam prapaśyadbhir janārdana janārdana yady
If,
api
even,
ete
they
na
do not
paśyanti
see
lobha
by greed,
upahata
overpowered their
cetasaḥ
hearts
kula-kṣaya-kṛtaṁ
in killing the family, done,
doṣam
fault,
mitra-drohe
and quarreling with friends,
cha
also
pātakam
sinful reactions.
katham
Why
na
should not
jñeyam
be known
asmābhiḥ
by us
pāpād
from sins,
asmāt
this to
nivartitum
cease,
kula-kṣaya-kṛtaṁ
and the destruction of a dynasty,
done doṣam
crime,
prapaśyadbhir
by those who can see.
janārdana.
O Kṛṣṇa.
Translation.
O Janārdana, although these men, their hearts overtaken by greed, see no fault in killing one's family or quarreling with friends, why should we, who can see the crime in destroying a family, engage in this act of sin?
Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. A kshatriya is not supposed to refuse to battle or gamble when he is so invited by some rival party. Under such an obligation, Arjuna could not refuse to fight, because he had been challenged by the party of Duryodhana. In this connection, Arjuna considered that the other party might be blind to the effects of such a challenge. Arjuna, however, could see the evil consequences and could not accept the challenge. Obligation is actually binding when the effect is good, but when the effect is otherwise, then no one can be bound. Considering all these pros and cons, Arjuna decided not to fight. Yadyapyetena paśyanti lobhopahata-cetasaḥ kula-kṣaya-kṛtaṁ doṣam mitra-drohe pātakam katham na jñeyam asmābhiḥ pāpād asmān nivartitum kula-kṣaya-kṛtaṁ doṣam prapaśyadbhir janārdana. O Janārdana, although these men, their hearts overtaken by greed, see no fault in killing one's family or quarreling with friends, why should we, who can see the crime in destroying a family, engage in these acts of sin? So, I have heard people quote this line here: obligation is actually binding when the effect is good, but when the effect is otherwise, then no one can be bound. It's consequentialism, right?
Right.
Arjuna is trying to argue against fighting based on the outcome.
Yeah, he's trying to get away at all cost.
Yeah.
Oh, Arjuna.
Yeah, I've heard people devotees quoting this, like non-ironically.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, but when the effect is not good, then no one can be bound. Of course, Arjuna's arguments that he's making here, and in this purport, Prabhupada is making the argument again. See, from this part here, in this connection, Arjuna considered that the other party might be blind to the effects of such a challenge. What are the effects of such a challenge? Kula-kṣaya, the destruction of a dynasty or killing a family. You see it here in the verse twice. Well, it's in 2 verses, right? Kula-kṣaya-kṛtaṁ doṣaṁ. Kula-kṣaya-kṛtaṁ doṣam. The fault, doṣam, of kula-kṣaya-kṛtaṁ, causing the destruction of the family. The fault. Overpowered by greed in their hearts. Na paśyanti kula-kṣaya-kṛtaṁ doṣam. They don't see the fault that comes from causing the destruction of the family. And then he says, kathaṁ jñeyam asmābhiḥ, but we can see the sinful reactions that will come from that. So then why should we fight? Why should we who can see that engage in this? And this is a good question. He's saying they can't see the fault that comes from killing or destruction of the family. And he will expand on this, what happens with the destruction of the family. He's saying these people on the other side, they're driven by greed and they can't see that the damage that will be caused by destroying the family.
Mm.
Why should we, who can see the damage that will come from the negative consequences of destroying the family, we can see that. Why should we fight? Now, in the purport, Prabhupada has constructed the argument, that why should you fight? Why are you on the battlefield ready to fight? Because you are challenged to fight by the others.
Mm-hmm.
You're not necessarily here, because you want to win the kingdom. Because he already did say that, what use is the kingdom to us in a previous verse. We don't want to enjoy any heavenly kingdom. So now, Prabhupada constructs another argument for us to consider about another level of motivation. Well, he's a Kshatriya and he's not supposed to refuse to battle when he's invited to do that. These other guys are challenging him. He has to fight.
And this as well, like Arjuna is recognizing these people are overcome by greed.
Mm-hmm.
And they're prepared to kill their family, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what he says? Oh.
Yes. Yeah.
He's recognizing that.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's saying, but I don't want to kill them. Although I know they're greedy,
Mm-hmm.
they're killers, they can kill their own family for carry over by greed.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't want to kill them.
Mm.
It's like, seriously, Arjuna.
Well, he's not just saying that he doesn't want to kill them. It's not like I don't want to kill my family members. He's talking about kula-kṣaya-kṛtaṁ doṣam, which is the destruction of dynasty. You may not agree. It's actually very interesting. For example, nobody advises Duryodhana's wife or Dhritarashtra's wife to leave him. They might disagree with what he's doing, but it's just a form of insanity. It's inconceivable for them to go to his wife and say, oh, you should leave him. You might disagree with him. You might fight with him on a battlefield and even kill him. But you would never go to his wife and tell her to leave him. Because that causes the destruction of dynasty. The destruction... When they talk about kula-kṣaya-kṛtaṁ doṣaṁ, they're not talking about the destruction of a family. They're talking about the destruction of family, of dynasty, of the actual structure of society. You see, today people think that if I do something, it's just me individually, you know? Like marriage is an individual affair between two people. And in the 12th canto of the Bhagavad-gita, it says that in the Kali Yuga, symptoms of Kali Yuga, 2nd chapter, 12th canto, men and women will be married simply as a matter of agreement. And then in the purport, it says, you know, and then they become unmarried when there's some disagreement. So in that way, they consider that, what has this got to do with anyone else? Because in reality, it really doesn't, because the entire structure, the fabric of society has been disintegrated. But otherwise, the family is the basic unit of society. It's the basic unit of education. The Gurukula means the family of the guru. So they go to live with the family of the guru. You smash the family, you smashed everything. It's the social welfare system. It's the aged care system. See, in our modern society, we have like the fracturing of the family unit, and it's being replaced by like government ministries and departments, communism. You know, like it's like a big factory, like factory farming. It's essentially like the difference between free-range farming and factory farming, you know?
Right.
You know, in free-range chickens or whatever, they have their own kind of hierarchies and little cliques and their own little things, right? Their own little families. Whereas if you have factory farming, they're just in these little cages. But there's no factory, there's no oranga tamariki, there's no Ministry of Social Welfare or Department of like children and young people or whatever to look after the children once these families get destroyed on this battlefield. So that's what he's saying. He's saying this is going to destroy a large number of families, which not only, he'll further develop the argument after this verse, not only will destroy the family for these children who are, you know, their fathers are here on the battlefield, but what will happen in the next generation is due to that, it will shatter the fabric of society, the family tradition itself. Because these fatherless children and these husbandless women will be unprotected and exploited. And that will just cause like complete destruction of the society. So he further develops it in the next few verses. And then Prabhupada says, you know, like, he can see the evil consequences, and so, you know, he reasons that, you know, for that reason, I shouldn't have to fight, even though I've been challenged to fight, and as a Kshatriya I have to, because, and he introduces this principle, when the consequences of an obligation are negative, no one can be bound to that obligation. However, Kṛṣṇa will dismiss this entire line of reasoning, this consequentialist idea. Because this idea that obligation is only binding when the effect is good, what kind of obligation is that? And how do you know whether it's going to be good or not? It just means if people did actually live like that, they would just like give up whenever effectively they felt like it, which is what Arjuna wants to do. Because you can always work out some way in which you can argue that it's not going to be good. It's just mental gymnastics. It's speculation.
Yeah.
Because no one can know the future effects, which is why the entire thrust of Bhagavad-gita, spoiler alert, is that one should do one's duty without consideration of the consequences. Because you don't know what is going to happen. You don't. So even though I've heard devotees quote this line from the purport, obligation is actually binding when the effect is good, but when the effect is otherwise, then no one can be bound. Prabhupada said that.
It's kind of selective, isn't it? It's like doing your obligation only when things are the effect, the effects or results are going to be good. If I know it's not going to be good, no, I'm not going to get into that.
Well, it's not even if you know it's not
like
going to
escape.
be good. It's if you think it's not going to be
Yeah.
good. Because you can't know. The future, knowing is a function of the past only. Human beings, because of the way the universe is constructed, only have knowledge of the past. Your general massive human, normal human, right? And then the future, even though it does exist, is hidden from us.
Mm-hmm.
And we go forward through time and we experience it, and we know the past, but we can only ever speculate about the future, except in like unusual cases, you know, we have some revelation of the future, which will happen to Arjuna in the 11th chapter,
Mm-hmm.
where he gets to see the universal form, and he gets to see past, present, and future simultaneously existing. But then he gets covered over again like a normal human, perceiving through the mind and senses of the human body.
Mm.
And we can only ever know about the past. So in language, to say that if you know anything about the future, that's a logical fallacy. You cannot know the future.
No. Definitely not. We can have an idea what could happen, but
Yeah. And you know about, like, you know, depending on what your mindset is like, you can be like cynical, resigned, pessimistic about the future, or you can be like optimistic about the future, or you could have faith in some future. You know, like you find that in the Gita and other places in Prabhupada's purport, it's about having faith. You know, like, okay, yeah, this is going to turn out, we can do this. And then you start taking actions that correspond to that. Otherwise you might think, oh no, I can't do this, I should stop. And then you stop, and then it doesn't happen.
I think we touched that in some previously, Bhagavad-gita,
Mm-hmm.
don't know, one something, but
Mhm.
it was talking about faith.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
okay.
can't remember.
What did it say?
say?
Anything in particular? Okay. Yeah.
I don't know, I have to look into that to quote exactly.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this purport, that line there, I mean, when this devotee quoted this to me, I was just like, what? Imagine if such a thing was a thing. Now, I'm sure that this, you know, I'll go looking for this to find out where this comes from, because it will be mentioned somewhere in some Dharma Shastra or something
Yeah.
that it comes from, this idea. But it's deviant. Because I'm telling you, as a person who has a lot of mental dexterity personally, I could argue on the basis of that principle my way out of absolutely anything.
Exactly.
Absolutely anything. I would never be obligated to do anything, because I could create some speculative argument about how the effect is not going to be good and therefore I cannot be bound. If you allowed such an argument to be entered. And I mean, Arjuna is doing this argument here. He's saying, Arjuna's argument is on the basis of this principle.
Mm.
If this principle was not underlying the argument, Arjuna's argument would make no sense whatsoever. I've been having this conversation with devotees, and a lot of devotees who have been reading the Bhagavad-gita for many, many years, even decades, like myself, they actually have this idea that consequentialism, arguing from the consequences of actions, is a thing. I'm like, I don't know how they got there, because from reading Bhagavad-gita, my conclusion from reading this is that it is literally a presentation of Arjuna arguing from the consequences, and then Kṛṣṇa saying, that is the wrong way to think. You should not think from what the consequences will be. You should think from what is your duty. You do your duty. Like, even that verse, you have the right to perform your prescribed duty, but you are not entitled to the results.
Mm-hmm.
Never be attached to the fruits of your action, nor should you ever be attached to not doing your duty. That verse right there sums it up.
Which contradicts this, actually.
Completely contradicts this
Yeah.
idea that, you know, oh, well, if the effect is not going to be good, then I'm just not going to do it. But at the same time, and this is very powerful, Arjuna's concern here demonstrates what kind of person he is. He is concerned for the impact, not only on his family, but on society itself. And he also is acknowledging here how the family is the basic building block of society. And without the family, there will be no protection for women and for children. Kula is the word for family. And Guru Kula means the family of the Guru. Duryodhana, on the other hand, could care less about those things. Doesn't even
That
feature.
guy is dry as anything.
Yeah.
So
And
cynical.
at the same time, having said this, we don't get to see any other conversations that Duryodhana has. But we just take it as it is on the surface, right? Duryodhana's character never gets that dialogue.
No, definitely.
So as far as his character is concerned, he's the bad guy. And he didn't say any of these kind of lines in here, so he gets to be the villain, and Arjuna is the hero.
I guess some of the actions he performed against the Pandavas, that tells a lot about the character of that person. You know, he tried to give them poison, put the house on fire, and what else did they do? Take the wife away, or disrobe the wife.
Yeah, I mean, look, I can generate a version of the story from inside Duryodhana's psychology. Because you see, we're all the hero in the story, right? No one thinks of themselves as the villain, do they? Do they? No. Everyone thinks that the other guy is the bad guy and I'm the good guy, right? I'm the hero. So from Duryodhana's perspective, what's happened here is that, you know, my father, Dhritarashtra, was the eldest son and he should have been the king. But, you know, he was born blind and it went to his younger brother, Pandu. And then Pandu went off into the forest. And then, you know, years later, one of the wives shows up with these kids that don't look anything like Pandu. They don't look like anyone else from here. They're all different. They got different fathers. None of them look like Pandu's children. And she says that they're her children and Madri's children and that they're, you know, Pandu's children. But for all we know, she could have just, like, collected them from the side of the road, you know, after Pandu died. And then and now she wants them to become, you know, the king. She wants this one Yudhisthira to become the king. But, like, you know, I'm actually the eldest son of the eldest son. And I'm genetically a Kuru prince. These ones that they want to send, they want to put on the throne, are not genetically Kuru princes. And they may not even be, you know. And then, of course, the argument will become that, of course, they're not. They have to have some kind of propaganda, you know, about how they're not. So, you know, from inside his perspective, he's, you know, he's, because you always, you know, nobody thinks of themselves as being like, I'm just greedy and I want it for my own sense gratification. You always got to, like, tell yourself a bit of a story about it, right? So within his world, he's saving the, you know, the succession and keeping it within the family because it's about to be usurped by some who knows who from who knows where. You know, so he can tell himself that story, and the others join on because when you look at it, that's what it looks like. And then when people are on the battlefield, on one side they see the might of the house of Kuru. They see the guy who looks like the Kuru prince, Duryodhana. And they see Bhishma and Drona there, the grandsire of the Kuru dynasty, you know, the martial guru of all of the princes. And then they see the other princes there, and they're kind of like, because another thing about it was a lot of stuff was done in an underhand way, like the poisoning of Bhima and the burning of the house, you know. These things were, and even the cheating in the gambling match where he won Draupadi and attempted to disrobe her. These things were all done as subterfuge. So they weren't openly done that everyone could see it. So it does seem to some people that, you know, these Kuru princes, the Pandavas, they're actually the bad guys. But we get some insight, you know, we have insight into all the subterfuges and everything that happens. And here we get this insight into Arjuna's thinking. And Duryodhana doesn't care about the destruction of the family. Arjuna is actually there, and he is actually concerned for the preservation of the Kuru lineage. Duryodhana's willing to risk it all.
That's true. Yeah.
At the same time, I can actually empathize. I can empathize with Duryodhana in his position. He is in a very difficult position because he also has his father, Dhritarashtra, and he has the whole weight of, as a son, his desire to please his father. And his father wants him to be the king. And so that's also collapsed in with his own desires himself. You know, a very strong desire is always going to be to please his father. So, you know, he has to go against a lot of things to not do this. He has to go against his own father, who's telling him that you are the rightful ruler. Which he's like, hey, I wouldn't mind doing that either, you know? So he's got all of those things combined together. It's very tough to go against that. It would really take something. And he doesn't have the character to do that. I mean, in a sense, that's kind of like devotees who are like, we should go and chant Hare Krishna at the parliament protest or in any protest or anything. They know that, they think that, but then they have leaders who are telling them that, no, you can't do that, and that's the wrong thing to do. And they want to do it, but to do it would require for them to go against their leaders and the legitimate appearance of authority, and it's a tough thing to do. So that's why a lot of people ended up on the other side of the battlefield against the Pandavas, because it really took something. You know, like, what motivates you to support the Pandavas and to go on their side, you know? What do you have to go against to be there? And you have to deal with while you're there that you think that you're probably going to lose at the end of all of it.
Right. Yeah. Kind of a tough situation. It's kind of like a lot of challenges, thought process here to understand exactly the whole situation. Because two different type of groups thinking they're right. The other one is more considerate than the other. Yeah. It's harder for me to think more than I can now.
I know, it's pretty late at night, isn't it?
I know,
it's 11:18. Tomorrow we'll do it earlier during the day.
Yeah.
Okay.
When our brain's a bit fresher.
Yeah. Arjuna could see the evil consequences and could not accept the challenge. So Arjuna has to do it no matter what the consequences are. But in this verse, in these two verses, an insight into his psychology and his concern as a leader. He's concerned for the impacts on others and particularly on society. And here we hear about kula-kṣaya-kṛtaṁ doṣaṁ, the evil or the fault of the destruction of the family. Param vijayate Sri Kṛṣṇa Sankirtanam, total world victory of Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.